Luka Doncic is a Laker. We know this. But if you haven't been keeping up, we're going to run through it today. We're going to run through all the trade details, what we think about the trade, who won, who lost, and the future of both of these teams. Without further ado, let's get into it. Of course, when we look back at this trade, we're going to talk about what this means for the legend himself, Jalen Hood-Schifino, who is now a Utah Jazz. He made his way over in this deal, former first-round pick. But all jokes aside, Jalen Hood-Schifino, former first-round pick, does go over to a young Jazz team that he's going to get more opportunities. So I think he is a hidden gem in this trade, as well as some draft capital. So I think at the end of the day, the Jazz come away in this trade as winners because they got something when they weren't even supposed to be involved. Now, when we look at the overview of the trade, and we'll come back to the screen, the Dallas Mavericks, they get Anthony Davis, who's going to go back to his natural position at the four. Max Christie, a young guard there who's had a career year, and a 2029 first round pick. Now, on paper, I see that is a haul for whatever they got in this trade. And that 2029 pick is huge, again, because LeBron might not be there in 2029. Bakari, that doesn't matter. You know why? Because now Luka Doncic is in Los Angeles with Maxi Kleber, with Markieff Morris. Those are fill-ins. We don't even care about them. But Luka Doncic is in Los Angeles in the prime of his career. You know, I said this to you off the podcast. I said there's just certain players where you just can't fathom the idea that they would ever get traded. You know, you
Yeah.
talk about the Wembys now of the world. Steph Curry, even though he's fallen off a little bit, he's still a great player, but he's taken a step back. You still can't fathom the idea of what, him being traded because of his impact on the team, of what he's done in his career, and just what he means to the city and the organization. You know, of course, you have players like Steph Curry, LeBron James, Giannis. Maybe, it's questionable, but Jokic. There's certain players, and again, I would throw Luka Doncic into that conversation up until a couple days ago. Bakari, your initial thoughts. Where were you when you got this notification? And again, early thoughts about this trade.
Yeah, so actually, I was asleep when it happened,
Yes, I
which
was.
never
Yes.
happens. It was a weekend and I didn't have work or anything. I just fell asleep early. I fell asleep at, I want to say 9:45, 10 o'clock, which is early on the early side for me. And I wake up and I'm kind of just going through my, notifications when you first wake up, like any person does, I'm sure. You kind of roll over, check your phone, see what happened during the night, kind of check the scores from the day before. And I see one of the ESPN notifications was LeBron responds to rumor about Anthony Davis trade, and I'm like, wow, I wonder
Right.
what happened overnight for Anthony Davis to be rumored that he's getting traded, and then that's when it happened. I just see nonstop Luka traded for Anthony Davis, and to be quite honest with you, like I literally, I like you, it's just you can't process it, you can't believe it. It happened out of nowhere, and it's just because of that fact that it happened out of nowhere, and it was such a trade to this magnitude where you literally didn't hear any rumblings about either one of those players getting moved. The
Right.
other,
Right.
like 3 days ago, you just had Anthony Davis talking about they were just a move away from being real competitors in his eyes,
I guess he
and
was the move.
exactly, and he gets traded. My initial thoughts about this trade are obviously. Jeannie Buss does not operate. She does not forward any pressure to players of any magnitude. Rather that I mean, we've seen it with in the Buss family from Magic to Shaq to Kobe. Now after the post Kobe era, it's been LeBron and Anthony Davis, and Jeannie Buss and management has not folded any power. If there have been bans by LeBron and AD, it's been kind of more management making the decisions.
Yes.
This move is clearly set up for the after LeBron era of Lakers basketball. And when you have a player like a generational player like Luka Doncic, you're gonna. I'm sure Rob Pelinka was like, "You're going to give me Luka now
Right.
for Anthony Davis." I don't know if you saw the report. The Lakers were not planning on extending Anthony Davis after next
Wow.
year. Or, I think it was next year or after next year. They could offer him an extension. They weren't going to give that to him. That tells me that they are ready to kind of just move off of LeBron and Anthony Davis at the same time. You get Luka now, and that's a completely different timeline for the Mavs. I think the Mavs think that if they're going to win a chip, it's going to be this year. The league seems about as wide open as it's probably ever been.
Yes.
Obviously, the Celtics are still the favorites in everybody's eyes for the most part. But out in the West, it's still wide open. I mean, the Thunder have been playing really well this year. But we saw this exact same matchup last year, and you get Anthony Davis now, who is going to be he's such a threat on the interior. He's just I mean Anthony Davis himself is a generational player. You don't get
Right.
a lot of Anthony Davises coming around, and this Mavericks team has been balling without Kyrie and Luka for the most part, majority of the season. They've been staying afloat. They've been staying kind of like steady ship, kind of waiting for their stars to get back. I think that some of the bench players outperformed what they usually play, and that kind of gave the Mavs a false sense of, hey, the team that we built for Luka, we don't need Luka in it. That's a whole other discussion. There's so
Right.
many discussions that this can go, but my initial reactions are the Mavs think that it's wide open this year, and you pair Kyrie and AD. AD plays the four. It's a bigger lineup, so the only threat that you really take care of are the Thunder, who are kind of smaller on the side, and the Lakers. You're getting a new timeline, a new star to kind of support the transition between LeBron and the new era. The only problem with the Lakers is this move kind of decimates their chances this year.
Right.
It's going to not only is it going to be a learning experience, but their roster just isn't good enough to compete.
Me.
Instead of being a move away with Anthony Davis, you're probably about three solid moves away from being real contenders.
Isn't it crazy how the rich get richer, Bakari? A franchise that has had all the star players, the second most titles in NBA history out of any franchise, and now they just wake up and say, okay, we're going to trade a guy that's going to be 32 in a couple months for a guy that's 25, and he hasn't even entered his prime.
Yeah.
When I initially saw that report, I was frustrated because I said, there's no way that a player of this magnitude and a player of his ability gets traded at this point in his career. I want to throw these things out there, Bakari, because I don't really defend players just to defend them. I don't defend players just to control a narrative. I defend players when they are just that damn good, and I think that they deserve more respect than they're getting. Now, for Luka Doncic in his playoff career, Bakari, this guy has exceeded expectations in every single year of his career. He's been the underdog in every playoff series of his NBA career, and he's 5-4 in those series. He's been the road team in all but one of those series, and he's played a top nine defense in all but one of those series. What was the outlier? Well, the Clippers were a top 10 defense, which he played this last season. So he's played a top 10 defense in every playoff series of his career, and he's 5-4 in those series. He's defeated the number one seed twice in his early career. All of this while averaging 31, 9, and 8, arguably one of the greatest individual playoff performers ever, right, so far. And he's only 25 years old. Again, entering the physical prime of his career. Outside of that, he's a five-time All-NBA first-team member, five-time NBA All-Star, which is 100% from the field in that metric. He was a scoring champion last year. Last year, he had a game with 73 points in a single game, shooting over 60% from the floor. He's one of 10 players to have multiple 60-plus point games in their career. Bakari, I bring all of this up to say that this is a guy that on his worst day is the third best player in basketball. And he just got traded for a guy that, well, if he's healthy, he's really good, but that's always it's always going to be a question with Anthony Davis. Can he stay healthy? So when I look back at this trade, I say, okay, sure, on paper, and we're going to look at the lineups in a moment. It makes sense for the Dallas Mavericks on paper because you got Kyrie, who's more mature now, and I see some people questioning whether if he could be a lead guard on a championship team. He's more mature now. I think he can do that as his playmaking continues to get better throughout the years. So you have a lineup where you have Kyrie, Clay, PJ Washington, Anthony Davis, and Gafford or Lively. On paper, it makes a lot of sense, right? You got your scorers, you got your defenders, your 3-point shooters. I honestly, if this team can stay healthy, they will make some noise. But that's a big question. You got two of your best two players have again not the greatest track history of staying healthy when it matters most. I'll put that out there. Now for the Lakers, it's going to be an interesting dynamic, Bakari, between Luka and LeBron. Two similar play styles, but LeBron has picked Luka in every single All-Star draft that has been known to man, and LeBron has said that it's his dream to play with Luka Doncic. They get to have that opportunity here, but it's no surprise. They need a center, and that's what we talked about last night, Bakari. I think Clint Capella, a guy that's going to be cheap for Atlanta, they want to get rid of him. Robert Williams could be another guy that they could look at. Vucevic, but he doesn't really solve any of their problems. I think Clint Capella or Robert Williams makes a lot of sense to just be that roll man five and okay rim protector for the Lakers going forward. But I want to focus solely here on the Dallas Mavericks. Now, you, of course, already talked about it. They think that it's wide open this year. They think that they can make a serious run. My question to you, can Kyrie Irving be a lead guard on a championship level team? One. And two, when it comes down to this team in the playoffs, do you think they're going to be able to get over the hump without that top three level player?
I do because you have a top 10 player in Anthony Davis, and you probably have a top 15-ish player, top 20 player in
Yes.
Kyrie. Kyrie, like you mentioned, he's at that point in his career where he's a lot more mature than he was in Cleveland and even in Boston. Kyrie has fitted his game to play next to other stars during the later half of his career. So when he was with the Nets, and he was able to kind of fit and adjust next to Kevin Durant. Even when James Harden was there, and he wanted to go to Dallas to play with Luka. Kyrie is more mature, more aware that it takes more than just himself to win games, to go to the finals, to be a champion. I think I have no doubts that Kyrie is going to be able to remold his game to kind of to up his scoring a notch as well as increase it. His usage is going to increase either way, and
Yes.
I think he's more than prepared for it. Last playoff run, we saw him take on the role as defender and secondary ball handler, and you've never really even seen Kyrie do that. But during that OKC and in Minnesota series, Kyrie was a menace on that defensive end, and you never really hear that. I think that Anthony Davis, all he's wanted to do since the Lakers won a chip is play the four. He knows it works.
Yes.
He knows that that's the blueprint for the teams that he's on to make long, deep runs. And I think that this is the time he's really going to have something to prove now, especially to Dallas fans, especially to the organization, especially to everybody everywhere. Like, hey, I still have a lot left in the tank. This is all I needed. I just needed to be able to play the four. And like I mentioned, these Mavs role players have had a ton of exposure this year because Kyrie and Luka and
Right.
PJ Washington have all been out. It's gonna be a very scary team when they're all healthy. Now, as far as what Nico Harris is talking about, this is a long-term 3 to 4
Oh,
year.
we're gonna get into that in a second.
Yeah, but this year alone, just looking at this year, I think they can really make some. I mean, honestly, I only see the OKC Thunder as their only real threat. I mean, another trade that happened, I guess, kind of puts the Spurs maybe somewhere in that. I have to see how De'Aaron Fox and Wemby play, but the Thunder, I think the Thunder got better just for this season, given Luka was already not playing, Kyrie has not really been playing, and you kind of just got somebody who he's only missed 11 games in the last 2 years, so everybody
Right. That
saying
narrative
what
needs
they
to die.
want. Yeah, everybody is saying what they want about him being injured. The last 2 years, really the last 3 years, he hasn't really been injured as much as people think.
You know, Bakari, last year, of course, you came on the show as much as you could, but I remember saying this to you every single time last year about the Dallas Mavericks. I think you could probably say it word for word, what I said to you every single time. But I said last year that when this team was a 6, 7, 8 seed kind of fighting just for playoff positioning, I continued to say that they were the biggest threat in the Western Conference. I said as long as they have 77, they are going to be able to make it to the Western Conference Finals and further. And they did just that. Now, last year was crazy because I also predicted the Pacers would go pretty far, but last year was just
Yeah.
an anomaly, no pun intended. This year, though, Bakari, you look at the Lakers. They have flaws. Even if the NBA wants to kind of boycott the Lakers and say, we're not going to give you that center that you want, at the end of the day, they have Jackson Hayes. He's serviceable, and I think he's going to look 2 times better with Luka Doncic on the floor. Even though it doesn't make as much sense on paper for the Lakers as it does for the Mavericks, I think the Lakers got just as good of a shot again because they have 77. I'm not trying to be funny. I'm not trying to push a certain narrative. At the end of the day, when you have players that are just that good, that is all the difference that you need, right? So if you throw Nikola Jokic on, let's say, the Rockets instead of Sengun, and that's a bad example because the Rockets are really good this year. But if you throw Jokic on a lot of different teams, they're still going to be looked at as contenders because they have a Nikola Jokic. Because Giannis is on a different team, they're going to be still looked at like contenders. And I have that same sentiment towards Luka Doncic. I think the Lakers are contenders this year, and I think they were before. But I think they were more so of an outside shot looking in. Now, I honestly, as crazy as it sounds, despite losing the defense of Anthony Davis, I think that they might even have a better shot to contend for a title this year because they have that dude that shows up when it matters most. But let's go look at the viral quote. Now, this was a trade apparently that was accepted on a Saturday morning, but it wasn't finalized and it wasn't released to the public until that night. But there was this to say from Mavericks GM Nico Harrison, quote unquote, I believe that defense wins championships. We'll come back to that. I believe that getting an all defensive center and an all star player with a defensive mindset gives us a better chance. We're built to win now and in the future. Bakari, what if I told you that last year, that Mavericks team that made it to the finals had a top seven defense with Luka Doncic? You could say all you want about Luka Doncic's defensive ability, but what if I told you they were top seven defense with Luka on the floor? So they've proven that they can build defensive lineups around a non-defensive player in Luka Doncic, and he can do enough offensively to take you over the top. There's a lot that I want to say in the defense of Luka Doncic, but I will say it does make sense when you look at this lineup for the Mavericks. They are a little bit more complete on that side of the ball now. But again, it doesn't make a lot of sense when you look at the numbers last year. They were really good with a Luka Doncic that was playing on two broken down knees. Bakari, your thoughts on this quote? And we're going to come back to Nico Harrison's resume in just a moment. But your thoughts on this overall, just the quote.
Yeah, it's tough because everybody knows you can look at I'll start by saying this. I like Luca. I'm not obviously not on the same fandom as you are and some of our friends are. Um it's tough because everybody knows you can look at team defense and kind of use that to reflect, oh, this player isn't that bad at defense.
Yes.
Um I think with the Mavs executives and everything like this, in that where this quote kind of originates from is I actually, believe it or not, I went back and looked at the finals last year, just kind of different random spots and random games,
Yes.
and some of them were kind of just popping up on my feed as, oh, this is when the Mavs, quote unquote,
Yes. I
this is
saw
when the
that
Mavs
video.
decided to get rid of Luca. And the problem, I don't think the problem was necessarily Luka's defensive ability. I think it was just his motor on that side of the ball sometimes on the highest level. And they just kind of just wanted to slide past that. Now, granted, he is 100% of their offense. He is
Yes. That's what I
100%
was
of
going to
what their
rebuttal with.
driving force is. But I think when you look at other ball dominant stars, and there are not a lot of just ball dominant stars. LeBron is obviously one. Prime James Harden, prime Russell Westbrook. There aren't as many now. I mean, if you want to say like Trae Young and like LaMelo Ball to lesser degrees, okay, but they're kind of out of the picture. They're not superstars. James Harden, I guess, made up for his defensibility in his prime by averaging 2.5 steals. I guess you could put James Harden at the top of a man's zone and say, hey, steal the ball every now and then. And James Harden was also one of the best post defenders in the league in
Luka
his
is as
prime.
well. But yes, continue.
Yeah, exactly. If he gets posted up,
Right.
and
Right.
LeBron is obviously the two-way legend up until about year 16. Then he and then he decided he's going to play defense the last 30 seconds of games, if that. I think this is quote is to cover up more internal stuff that they necessarily didn't like or didn't feel secure about with Luka's future with the team. Now that's insane because that is your superstar. If Mark Cuban is still the owner of that team, this doesn't happen. You overlook all of that because he is a superstar. He is your franchise. But I think this quote was more so to cover up what they really felt or things they really wanted to say or stuff that happened behind the scenes or things that they didn't feel secure about with Luka behind the scenes, and you just throw, hey, he's not good at defense because this is the thing that you push out the most. This is the thing most people say, hey, he's not good at defense. We want a defensive ability. We want a defensive lineup. Well, why trade a 25-year-old superstar for a 32-year-old star? Why not trade
Right.
a 25-year-old superstar for a 23-year-old rising star, a 23-year-old star? Like it's just a different avenues you could have went. I think in this case, the quote is covering up other actions or other feelings.
Yeah, I think honestly, as much as all these reports are coming out that say that, oh, the players didn't know this and that. I honestly think that they had these discussions because it's weird to me, Bakar, that they didn't test the market, right? Because there's other great, like you're telling me if they try to throw a package of Luka to go get a Giannis, right? I know Giannis is kind of in that conversation of untouchable, but superstar for superstar, Giannis is a little bit younger than AD, and he does, pretty much the same, if not more. Regardless, I'm just saying maybe, some of these conversations around the league could have been had. I honestly think that these players knew. I think Luka and LeBron knew, right? I think Luka knew because it's so weird that he didn't request a trade and a player of his caliber just got traded out of the blue in the middle of a season. That
So
is
in the
where
same
I think,
conference. That's another thing too.
yeah, in
That
conference, yes, a team that's going, they're probably going to see in the playoffs,
yeah.
on their side of the bracket, if not in a one-on-one matchup. But I wanted to do some digging because obviously I'm not a big fan of this trade from the Dallas Mavericks side. I honestly think that it was a horrendous trade for the simple fact that you're trading away a guy that is your franchise, right? This is a guy that when I went and looked back, he let a willing, right, a willing Jalen Brunson walk after Jalen Brunson agreed to sign to a deal of a 4-year, $55 million contract that's coming off Jalen Brunson's breakout season there in Dallas. And of course, he went on to New York to do incredible things, and he's an All NBA player now at this point in his career. Now, would he have been an All NBA first team member with Luka? That's in question, but I think he would have no doubt improved every single year. And a 4-year, $55 million contract is nothing for the production that you would have got out of Jalen Brunson. Now, Bakari, you always hear these stories, and I've heard the infamous story about why Steph Curry chose Under Armour over Nike. What if I told you, Bakari, it's because of this man on your screen? This is the guy that was at the time a VP at Nike, and he was the guy that was in charge of the slideshows, kind of like the selling, the pitches, right?
Yeah.
For college football fans, the hard sells when you want to try and go get these certain guys to join your team. He was the sole reason for these slideshows. He was the one that was too lazy to one, take Kevin Durant's name off of the slides to pitch it to Steph Curry, but he was also the guy that mispronounced the name on the slides and in person. He was lazy in
And didn't
that
offer him a
regard.
shoe.
What? You said what?
And didn't offer him a signature shoe. He said no signature shoe was
Exactly,
on the
that
table.
as well. So again, he he hasn't had the greatest future or the greatest history as far as decision making in these big time moments. Now, I'm not going to hold that VP decision against Steph Curry as much weight as this trade with Luka Doncic and, of course, the Jalen Brunson decision. But obviously, he hasn't had the greatest track history when we
You know,
want to
I,
look
I
at
I
all the
will
all the
say,
things.
and there's no defending Nico Harris, but I will say in this, I think that Jalen Brunson kind of mishap was more so Mark Cuban because I remember they offered him that contract and Jalen
Apparently,
Brunson
Brunson
was going to
agreed to it.
wait. Yeah, well, I remember hearing he was going to wait till the end of the season to sign it, and that's when Luka was hurt the first round, and him and I'm sorry, Jalen Brunson and Dinwiddie went crazy against the Jazz, and Brunson went crazy throughout the playoff run, and then I think that's when Jalen Brunson wanted like 80 or 90. I think he increased it, and then Mark Cuban pretty much was like, well, if you can go find somebody giving you $100 million contract, then you could do that, and that's when Jalen Brunson left. But I remember that Jalen Brunson mishap was more so on Mark Cuban not giving it was Jalen Brunson didn't end up signing before the contract deadline because of some reason, and he said he was going to sign that same contract after the season, and it just so happened that's when he played his best basketball and felt that he had earned a higher contract, and Mark Cuban didn't want to do that. I mean, he made up for it because I think before Mark Cuban gave up his power, he traded for Kyrie,
Yes,
but
and that's what
obviously
I
he
was going to
should have
get at.
never have done that. So
Yeah. Yeah. As much as I brought up these stats just to nitpick at them, and again, I was going to say that the Kyrie Irving trade happened, so it doesn't really matter. But of course, it would have been a lot cheaper to sign Brunson to that deal in the midseason mark than, of course, the
yeah.
80-90 than he wanted at the end of the year. Regardless, again, that's hindsight 2020. It's always better when you look back in time. But these are the lineups, of course, the starting five. Now, when you look at the Lakers, they still have Vandy off the bench. Of course, you still got the superstar himself, Bronny James. You still got some, again, some rotational pieces on this bench. And for the Mavericks side of things, again, we already looked at this lineup, but it's a very complete lineup. And then you still got guys like Jaden Hardy, Dante Exum, Najee Marshall off the bench. The Mavericks, despite losing by 50 plus points the other night, uh, some of those younger players did have some pretty good outings. Again, I went to that game and Jaden Hardy, he just kept going to just, hey, let me just sprint. It was kind of like Oladipo, what he used to do, right? He just sprinted to the mid range. He had a little bit of a step back and just pulled it, right? He had, I think, 13 or 15 points just doing that alone against my Cavaliers the other night. But these are the lineups, Bakari. I'm going to ask you this. We have yet to see either guy play, and we'll end it on this note. As of February 3rd, who do you think won this trade?
It's tough because if Luka got traded to any organization other than the Lakers, I'd be like Luka for sure because you still keep that power of the superstar. But the Lakers are a entertainment organization, and they're not going to fold that. Genie Bus is not going to fold that power. Rob Pelinka is not going to fold that power to any. But they didn't do it for any of the stars before. They're not going to do it for Luka. The roster construction is iffy now. You have to. There's a whole another time period after LeBron leaves to try and get that roster built around Luka. And not only that, I really don't think Luka's going to stay there. I think he'll play the rest of this contract out. I don't know if he'll sign an extension. I think his next goal will be really trying to join forces with Nikola Jokic. I don't think that he spends his entire prime in LA. As crazy as that sounds. So I say obviously right now, just because of the fact you got a superstar player, it's February 2nd, February 3rd, whatever it is. I'd say the Lakers won this trade, but I can honestly say I really don't know long term because I mean obviously the Mavs got older. The Mavs aren't winners, but I don't know necessarily know if that makes LA winners right off rip because there's a lot coming to play with LA. There's the fans, there's the expectation, I mean you're going to have championship expectations every year, regardless of the roster you have around you. You're going to have those LeBron level expectations. Not to say that it's any different, but it is different with this fan base, with this management group, with everything that comes with that. These fans are ruthless. LA fans are ruthless, and it's only going to be magnified when LeBron's playing there as well, because everybody is LeBron fans at this point in his career. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that's
Yeah.
going to drive Luka out of LA or kind of force him to, or kind of want him to go play like with Jokic or with another star somewhere else. But I'd say for right now, LA won the trade.
Yeah, I'm going. You know where I stand on this trade, but I will say this: that's an interesting point you brought up there with Nikola Jokic. I didn't really think about it, but it does make a lot of sense because at that point is Jamal Murray. He's going to be at the end of his contract, and I know that Mike Malone loves Jamal Murray, but to bring in a guy like Luka Doncic, that would be special, right? And I think, of course, those guys have hinted at teaming up for a very long time. But again, I think the Mavericks, I don't think they are losers in this trade, but I think they definitely don't have the better side of this trade, is what I'm going to end it on there. But the last thing I want to ask you, Bakari, as of right now, again, we haven't seen them play, we haven't seen any additional moves they might make. Who do you think has a better chance this year to win the NBA Finals? Is it this Lakers team that doesn't necessarily have the pieces, but they got the superstar, or the Mavericks who are a lot more complete?
The Mavericks and honestly, even if the Lakers kind of had more pieces around them,
What if I said this? What if I said that the Lakers ended up picking up like an Andre Drummond or like a Robert Williams? I just want to throw that out there because they're cheap.
yeah, they're cheap, but Time Lord is very injury prone.
Yes, I don't think they move the needle. I just want to throw it out there.
Andre Drummond, he's a high motor player, but you can only really play him in spurts certain times. But I honestly, my thing is, it's just going to take a lot of. It's just going to take the rest of the season for Luka and LeBron to be able to figure it out, no matter how much they want to play with each other. I can't really remember the last time one of these kind of mid-season trades have happened and the team has kind of made like a seamless fit. And I get it's LeBron and Luka, but these are both ball dominant superstars who really don't play defense. And you need three other real defenders around them, and you got to hope that as of right now that their offense, that these two players' offense alone can kind of propel them, which it definitely can. But I think that the getting to know how to play with each other, even if it's just for one season next year, and then LeBron retires or however long that may be. I think it's going to take a while because that's been the one thing about LeBron's game he's never really been able to figure out is how to play with other ball dominant superstars. Dwayne Wade was able to play off the ball more, and LeBron was the facilitator of the Cavs when that second
Right.
stint. I think every Cavs fan knows that Kyrie was the scorer, LeBron was the facilitator. I think it's a little bit different now. It didn't work out with Russ. Obviously, Russ was kind of going on a downward trend, but it'll definitely take some time to really figure out how to work together. I mean, I hate to use this example as Cavs fans, but I mean, we saw Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland not be able to figure out how to play with each other for 3 years up until
Yeah.
this point. So it'll
Look
take
at us
some time.
now, though, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
We're
Hey,
contend for it. We're going to win the NBA Finals here in a couple months.
yeah, and we're gonna play the Mavericks and sweep them. So
Yeah, I don't think again we're gonna be like the NBA 2K rebuilds, and we're not gonna lose a single game probably for the rest of the season.
you're right.
Now I do want to say this: some interesting things that I kind of wrote down. This is the first time that LeBron's been on a team where he hasn't been the best player, something that is interesting to look at. I think we're going to see different lineups of LeBron maybe being the pseudo point guard and Luka being the shooting guard. I think even though LeBron might be classified as the four or the three, I think he might be running the one, Luka at the two, and then you got, Austin Reeves, Vandy, Rui, whoever they want to throw in that front court. Some other things. I think that the X factor for this Lakers team is LeBron's 3-point shooting and their ability to find a big man. If LeBron can consistently knock down two or three threes a game, I think that's going to be the X factor around Luka Doncic because he's pissed off. He's a superstar player, and the best is yet to come. As crazy as that sounds
I will
for,
say Luca gotta he gotta cut some weight, man. I think
I don't care if that dude's 400 pounds, right?
listen,
If that dude
it's
was,
not about his playing weight to me. It's about he keeps getting knick-knack injuries. And we never really I remember telling you this last year because we were talking about who should have won an MVP and you were saying Luca should have won it. Luka should theoretically be top two in every MVP race for the rest of his career. The problem is his conditioning when he comes into the season. There's a ramp up. It's like prime Shaq. There's a ramp up period.
like
So then
Harden,
he's
yeah.
playing his best basketball come February, March, and then you're like, well, how is this guy not the MVP? And it's like, well, from October to January, it kind of took him a while to get his legs up under. His numbers are good, but his impact wasn't as crazy as it always is. And then that's when he starts playing his best. But it's always those knick-knack injuries that take Luka out, whether it's a calf injury, an ankle injury, a thigh injury, or something. He'll still play, but he's playing on one leg, and then he's going to look like he was last year in the finals, where he doesn't have any knees available, and he can't even kick his leg out to kick the ball when they're
Yeah,
trying to throw an entry pass or anything like that. I think if he
that
can
is a
at
problem.
least get that more under control, just stay conditioned, just
Yeah.
treat your body right after the games, and not get these knick-knack injuries it not only will it propel him through the offseason, but it make his MVP cases in season a whole lot better. We know how good Luka is playing on one leg. That's a 31-9-9 player. But how about we see Luka play on two legs from the beginning of the season all
That's
the
the
way
best
through
player
the
in the
end of
world, Bakari. That's the best player in the world.
well, I haven't seen it yet, so
Yeah, well, I'm just throwing it out there. If he's healthy, and like you said, if this trade is gonna piss him off enough, where he gets in shape, as crazy as that sounds, I think that's the best player in the world. And this is coming from a dude that's defended Jokic for a while now. But that is probably gonna wrap it up here. I will say that tomorrow I gotta wrap my head around all these trades because De'Aaron Fox and Zach LaVine just got swapped for each other here
Malik
last
Monk is the
night.
point guard.
Some more fireworks might continue to happen. But as always, at the beginning of every month, on Tuesday, I give you guys my updated power rankings. So tomorrow is going to be a fun show. And on Thursday, it's Super Bowl time, ladies and gentlemen. Super Bowl is coming up this week, and Amir's going to join the show. We're going to dive into that matchup. Bakari, who do you got in the Super Bowl, man? Eagles, Philly, right? Philly or the Chiefs? Chiefs going for a three-peat. Philly, they got a more talented roster, and they're back for blood. Which side do you lean on before we get out of here?
I don't like the Chiefs, but you can't bet against Mahomes and
Not
Jalen
until he
Hurts
proves
hasn't
us
played.
wrong.
Jalen Hurts has not played as good as he played in that Super Bowl in that season since. It'd be hard pressed for me to just think that he's going to come out and have that same performance. So it's just like that prime Tom Brady effect. You can't really bet against Mahomes even if you really 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 want to.
Yeah. Chiefs going for a three-peat. But we'll talk about that on Thursday. Bakari, thank you for joining the show. We never see a trade of this magnitude happen. If we do, maybe Kevin Durant gets traded in a day or two. Jimmy Butler's still out there.
Hopefully
Of
LeBron
course,
gets
I
traded
will.
back to the Cavs.
Right? But if anything like that happens, I will ask you to come back on the show if you, of course, can make the time. But until next time, stay happy, stay healthy, and Luka Doncic, man, time to make a statement.